Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Tuesday Tea. This week we have Andrea. She's an incredible colleague and friend who we're going to dive into this wonderful word of disruption and how we're sort of breaking the rules through disrupting norms, thoughts, rules, etc. But just to give you a little background on Andrea, she is a LMFT, a licensed marriage and family therapist. She is certified in a really cool therapeutic intervention called internal family systems. If you ever hear people talking about parts, that's all her. She's an expert at all of that. She's also working on her coaching certification. And she works really specifically with women living in fat and larger bodies and how they can feel more comfortable and feel like they are seen and heard and begin to love and embrace themselves and all the beauty that they have. And she has some really cool offers she's going to share at the end that are coming up this summer. And the most important piece of her bio is that she is a cat whisperer, which I too am a fellow cat lover. And so we could probably talk for an hour on that, but we're not going to. But we love cats and I love people that love cats. So welcome, Andrea. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Of
Yeah, I'm
course.
excited.
So just to kind of start it off, what are some ways that you see or think of this word disruption as actually a catalyst for positive change or something important that we all kind of need in our lives?
Well, first of all, like I notice in hearing you ask that question and thinking about this question, like I am really excited in hearing that word. Like it just
Nice.
enlivens something in me. So I'd be curious if it does in you too.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and yeah,
It
and
feels like
and
like like we're standing on a car like in a cool outfit yelling about something important. I don't know, like it like disrupt, like I want to like get your attention. That's kind of what I feel like when I hear that word.
yes, I can see it. And right, and yes, it would grab my attention for sure. And I think it's necessary for any kind of change, right? So I had a mentor who said any change is is positive, like it's because it's something different. And for example, like I think of okay, so if I've maybe been feeling really down and low lately,
Hmm.
and then something happens and I shift into anger. And so I think it's so quick to judge how oh, well, that may not necessarily be a good thing, but it is a shift, it is change.
Yeah, that's
Um,
information.
and it is, it's totally, it's information. And so that it's disruption, in my own opinion and belief, um, is that it's necessary, absolutely necessary. And I was also thinking about when I think about disruptors, right? There's like really major influential disruptors
Hmm.
throughout throughout history and in our current lifetime. And it may not be like their only role in life, that they have many roles, but that being one that they're going to be remembered for by
Yeah,
many people.
yeah.
And so I find that okay, I have them sitting within my awareness when I think about disruption.
Mm,
And then also like if I'm aligning with my values, the more aware I become of okay, what are my values, and the more I want to align with them, I am going to be a disruptor because
yeah, yeah.
I'm going to change. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to behave in a different way. I'm going to feel and think in different ways that people maybe aren't used to.
Mm,
Um, and so that can be shifts in my personal and professional life where it's like, okay, yeah, like maybe I'm not speaking to somebody anymore. Not like not speaking to them as in cut off, but like what I'm saying, what I'm doing
right,
isn't aligning with their values
right, right.
anymore. And so that causing disruption, but again, in relationships, but that being really necessary if I'm gonna
Yeah,
be
yeah.
more me.
And I think what you're bringing up is this theme that not everyone's for everybody. And
Right.
if we want to create change, if we want to, we talked about innovation last week, like if we want to think outside the box, do something different, if we want to stay connected to what drives us, then we are going to disrupt or unsettle or ruffle feathers along the way. Because if we aren't, then there's a problem, I think. Like in that case, we then aren't being true to ourselves. We aren't thinking critically, or we have no opinion to the point of unhealthy because we're just going with everything. So we have no identity, right?
Yes.
And that I would rather be at odds or not agree with someone, but know where they stand, than have a person who I can't pin down because they like everything. And that to me would feel, just to not disrupt, that feels more threatening or uninteresting than the person who is very opinionated or is very clear on where they're going. Even if it changes sometimes, but like stays on their track, that's, I have more respect for that, even if it's not something I maybe align with or believe in myself, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. Like that really resonates in just speaking to, okay, yes, like we may not agree, have the same values, and I know where you stand, and
Mm-hmm.
and 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 I love the idea too. And then can we have a conversation about that? Like, can
Yes.
we
Yep.
um, experience that together? That discovery of, okay, who are you and who am I? And like, I don't know. I gain a lot of clarity when I hear other people speak,
Yeah.
um, and like, oh
100%.
yeah. And so if somebody isn't speaking and only agreeing, then yeah, it's like, okay, what do you stand for, or what are your top values
Right.
or
Right. Have you
passions?
seen Hamilton, the Broadway show?
I haven't yet.
Uh, there's this Aaron Burr. There's like a lot of songs about how Hamilton's like, but I'd rather have stand and died for something than to be known for someone who stands for nothing. And like why he doesn't endorse him for the presidential uh candidacy, for in his cases, because like I don't know what you believe in. Like you were a Republican, then you were a Democrat, like, whatever that meant back in the day. But like you're just hopping on board. So it's just such an interesting theme where even if he hated the other guy that he ends up endorsing, he was like, I get what I think it was Jefferson. He's like, I know what he needs or wants. Like, I don't know who you are. You're such a shifty person. Right. So Burr was like, talk less, smile more. Do you think he's speaking to a woman? But in this case, he wasn't. He was talking to Hamilton. But it's like don't disrupt. And to Hamilton, he was like, no, disruption is life. Like without it, we wouldn't have this country. We wouldn't be over here. We wouldn't be fighting for these things. So I can't get on board with you because you don't disrupt. And to me, that's problematic. So that's just such a big visualization in this rendition of Hamilton to Broadway. Not that it's totally all the true story, but really, I thought it was just a very interesting. Like he'd rather go for the guy that disrupted in a way he didn't necessarily align with than the guy who was like uninterested in ever disrupting, kind of a thing.
And it's interesting too, because like as I hear you, how how comfortable that might feel for some people to have somebody kind of be the, I think of it more along the lines of like people pleasing, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of always gonna fawn around you. How that actually might appeal to some people. But then again, okay, and at what cost is that
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
um, to the relationship, to both? Yeah,
To
I'm
yourself, to them. Yeah. It's
yeah,
actually more problematic when we think we're being less of a problem
yeah,
than to rock the boat sometimes when it's necessary, right? And I think there's a balance here. Not all the time just because and not ever to like be a doormat, but like where's that middle of where we can push the edge and break the rules through some disruption if the rules just aren't working for us or don't feel right anymore. Um, so I'm curious, do you have a time when some either disruptive thinking or disruptive action in your personal life or something you've seen in your work with clients or in other people can you give an example of maybe when you've either experienced that or witnessed that and what sort of the outcome was there?
yeah. So, and it really, this evolution of me and who am I, and um, so going back like about 10 years ago, I was in it was called Power of Language, and it was like this language seminar, but it was more experiential and there was coaching involved, and it was just an amazing experience, and really intense. And I was called, each person in the group, and there was about 10 of us, were called, to stand before everybody and to make our declaration, like who am I, and who do
Mm,
I, right? So kind of like, who do I want to be? Who am I? How do I, and by making this declaration, I'm more apt to become more of me, right? And
mm-hmm.
so like, I still carry the card. It says here, I'm standing there and I'm saying in front of this group, um, uh, I am a lovable, self-trusting, authentic, and beautiful woman. Okay, so that's who I want to be. And my coach says, "Can I offer a suggestion?" And I'm like, "Sure." I trust her, um, and I've just gone through this kind of this process of what was blocking me from being able to believe
Those
and
things.
really hold this declaration to be true. And she says, "Well, the suggestion is, gorgeous. Let's change beautiful to gorgeous." And my throat constricted, and I just had like this physiological reaction that was like, no way, because immediately I get
Mm,
the image of magazine covers.
yeah.
And I am not gorgeous. I do
Mm,
not fit that definition. And there's no one who is going to say, yes, Andrea is gorgeous. Like that is not, I'm not going to meet that criteria. Right,
mm,
all of the no's.
yeah.
So she let it go. And you and I are in a class and we're writing, and it hit me, it smacked me upside the head. Like, no, I am gorgeous. And it's because I get to define it.
Mm,
10 years later, I get to define what is
what that
gorgeous,
means.
what that means. And I get to start saying, and of course, it's through a lot of work, in a variety of ways, and a lot of education.
Mhm.
But like, okay, I'm gonna disrupt what I believe the beauty standards are. Um, I'm gonna disrupt this thinking and the beliefs that I'm carrying.
Mm,
And I know I'm not the only person out there doing that.
I
And in
love
a
it.
fat and large body, um, that there are many. And it's like, yeah, like that. Okay, those people who want to join this, so whether it's a movement or it's right, a different way of being, it's like, okay, that's what I'm wanting, and that's people
Yeah.
that I'm wanting to connect with. I want people to be able to feel into that,
Yeah.
maybe sooner than I did.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, that's such an incredible story. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think that brings up such a topic that I think about so often is these boxes and labels and rules that seem to be particularly already set around being a woman and what that means and looks like. I just read the book On Our Best Behavior by Elise Lonan. It's a really good book. But she basically talks about how, not even in a religious way, but how the seven deadly sins were sort of appropriated by patriarchy, particularly by the Catholic and evangelical church. And it was actually eight thoughts that were like created by this monk, and then it became the seven deadly sins. And really specifically, how women need to stay in line for those sins, right? And the sin of gluttony, she talks a lot around why is thin right? And what does it mean to judge like all bodies by this one interesting standard, that who like created that, and why does it mean you're lazy if you're not like, Britney Spears circa 2004 skinny. And also though, on the other end, like this movement of body positivity, but we'll also like, well, what are we putting in our bodies? How are we taking care of our bodies? On either end, we need to still look under the hood, right? And so it's not about per se like fitting a certain size, the way that as culture this is good or bad or right or wrong, but there is something missed if you're striving for something that just like is unhealthy or isn't your body type, or what's that like impossible standard. And it's also missed if we're just like, it's fine, I'm just in this body and like say la vie, but really we're, eating to hide from a trauma, or we're uninterested in movement because of something else, or we are a risk for things, or like skinny people are also not necessarily healthy, right? So it's like,
Right,
what is
right.
what is strong versus fat or skinny? What is healthy versus this or that? And so just was a very interesting chapter though, of how just this impossible standard none of us can reach, that we're all being shoved into,
Yeah.
perpetuates like how we behave with others, how we think about ourselves. And so just this idea of like using language like gorgeous, and like how we've been taught to think about that, or a body size, or how you're supposed to prevent, or how much or present, or how much space you're allowed to take up in the world. um it it's attached to moral goodness somehow.
Yes.
And saying it out loud, we're like, that doesn't make sense, but like we all really believe that on some level. And the disruption that's happening that I think is so important is we're questioning that, like, what, like, who decided that and why, right? Or around slothfulness, taking rest, not being lazy, resting, or feeling pride in ourselves, which doesn't have to be negative pride, like we should have pride, or all the different ones.
Mhm.
But I know, especially with the topic that you work around, I thought it was just so interesting, and it's so necessary, because there are so many unhelpful myths and untruths out there that we just automatically sort of subscribe to without thinking. And that's where I think these disruptive conversations need to come into play, because just because they were there doesn't mean that they're actually true or healthy or helpful, right?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to that whole piece around languaging, because what is considered fat? And
Right.
and and then we know, okay, now we know, all right, something, the mathematical equation, the BMI,
Is a
you
bunch of
know,
shit.
right, it's
It's on some like
absolute
Swedish man
bullshit.
or something.
It's
It's not even like
Yeah, and
American or woman. Like, it doesn't
yeah,
make any sense. Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, yeah, and it's rooted in racism,
Yeah.
um and so it's the idea that, okay, well, wait a minute, if that's bullshit, what else is too?
Yeah.
And so I say, yes, I am in a fat body. Um, Now, if I were 5 sizes smaller, would I still believe that? I don't know. Would somebody else who, if I was 10 sizes smaller, would they still think I'm fat?
Right.
So
Right.
the languaging is like, what is it? And um, but me taking ownership of, no, like, this is my body and I am responsible for it. I care for it.
Mm-hmm.
How I care for it. How do I feel after
Mm-hmm.
I do something? How do I feel after I move a particular way?
Yeah.
Am I nourishing myself, or am I doing something because someone said that this is the way?
Right. Right.
And that's not working for me anymore.
Yeah. And I think it's just even back to language in general. We So many things are just social constructs that we use to make sense of things, but the judgments that come along with them are not real. They're not rooted in anything real.
Right.
Um, like back in the day, being a larger person was a sign of wealth,
Mhm.
and it was highly exalted, right? Meant you had food, it meant you ate well, it meant you didn't have to move your body around too much and like work as a laborer. Like, it just all depends on, and you could use that for like race, for skin tone, for gender. Like, I mean, all of this stuff are constructs that we've created, again, to like help us make sense of stuff, and or to for oppression and all the other negative things.
Mhm.
But what we need to start doing is disrupting the judgment and the attachment we have to the boxes I think we've put some of this in, and
Yeah.
ask different questions, right?
Yes.
Which kind of leads me into maybe my next question of, how are you possibly using this idea of this disruption in the work that you are doing with clients? How is that sort of a central theme to your own offers, or to the messages that you're sending or instilling in others?
Yeah, I think of in right, of course there's like challenging beliefs with information that I might be familiar with or come
Mm-hmm.
across. And you know, and I don't know if you're familiar with Byron Katie. Um, yeah, so she does something called like the work, and it really does explore again kind of that languaging, like, is this true? Is this and then okay, so if I say I'm fat and that means, I'm lazy. Okay, well,
Mm,
is that true? Well, is that really true? So I might say, well, yeah, that means it's true because that's something that I've heard
mm.
from from outside, for so long that then I absorbed it as my truth.
But it's
And
not necessarily, you're
and
not
it's
necessarily a lazy person.
and it's oh my gosh, no, like right. But then there's also right the a part of that is then um that that American I don't know if dichotomy is the right word, but it's like the um, belief that we have to work hard. And
Yes.
so, right, so I work hard, and a part of that is to like, there's a belief. Well, if I prove myself, to other people, that I'm a hard worker, they see me out working in my yard, or they, like,
Right. They'll know I'm not lazy. So therefore my
right,
size has nothing to do with my ethic of work, which therefore none of this is real, but I have to constantly keep proving it in a way that doesn't make sense and isn't necessarily helpful or even needed. Because who am I trying to prove this to and why? Because of this like myth that we've been told over and over and over that we have to fit in these boxes and play by these rules, right? Or we are one of the sins or something bad or something's wrong with us,
right,
etc.
yeah. And so, really, what I love in working with clients is that often at the core of so much, if not darn near everything, I don't know. Um, and how do you prove this anyway? But like at the core is shame. Like somehow I
Yeah.
am bad or I'm
Yeah.
not lovable because, and whether it's body type, body size, how much space one takes up vocally,
Yeah.
um, or with or physically. There's just all of these constructs that, okay, um, if I'm challenging those beliefs that I have absorbed, right? And so ultimately, I gave up my power along the way.
Yeah.
And now I want it back. And so, in working with my clients, if we work on that shame and really changing the perception of that,
Mm,
releasing it,
mm.
and that might be through parts work, it might be through coaching, but in doing that, we're taking our power back, and it's like, no, I am not no, like I am intrinsically good. and
Yes. Yes. You
and
have
this is where,
inherent worth because you are here, not because of
yes,
anything else.
right,
And you
right,
have so many things that you take care of the house that you live in, it like your body home, and you have a lot to offer the world and you're allowed to like use your voice and take up space. But I think you're right. A lot of us don't believe that those things are true, or we can only do it a little bit or only have one of those and not all of them. Or, it's like we have to play these like mental girl math games that like all those funny memes like aren't actually real math. They don't make sense. But it's how we kind of negotiate how we survive and fit in the world. Um, but we have to give up a lot of that authenticity
yep,
along the way, and we give up a lot of power along the way if we're going to fit in a box that like isn't the shape of us, right? Like that wasn't created for us. We're compromising something to stay there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's I don't know, I'm with you in this. It's like, yes, you're speaking my language.
Yeah, yeah. No, and it's such, I think it's so important. I think that we get out there and we think about what are the spaces that we feel strongly about, personally that we want to disrupt for ourselves. And
Yeah.
then I think that next step is how can we even carry that on to help others feel empowered to disrupt or advocate for others, or, in whatever capacity that might look like. And I think probably a lot of folks listening might even do a lot of disruption in their own place of work or be really good at it for their kid. You're not going to say that about my kid or their partner or their mom or whoever, but it's hard to do it for ourselves. And so how can we practice in the low hanging fruit areas first, but practice on us? We have these tools, but where do we need to get that vision straightened out, or step into more of our voice and reclaiming our power? And there's going to be some disruption because someone else has it if we don't have it, and we got to take it back. So that might cause some waves, but it doesn't mean it's bad. I think it's actually a really important um, activity and engagement to do, and to constantly be evaluating and thinking about.
Absolutely. And just one more thing about that is
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of it as, there are people who do this work and I really look up to, right? So it's like, okay, they have been, there's different variations of this, but since the 60s, right, there's been a movement. Um, and so looking at people who have been those disruptors who are further along than I am, and that this is like it can be a parallel process for me in
Yeah.
that, okay, at the same time I'm being seen, I'm being heard, and the idea of that would have given me a panic attack 10
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah.
And so becoming more comfortable in my body and with who I am and what I value, what I believe. It's a parallel process, and it's like, okay, and so um, who can I help? Grab that hand, pull along, walk with
I love
me,
that.
walk beside me,
Yeah.
and we'll see each other in this.
Yeah. Yeah. And hopefully this conversation will potentially speak to someone who wants to grab your hand and hop on. And can you tell us a little bit about some things you might be offering or where people can find you? I'll make sure I have links in the email too, but just how can people get in touch with you further if they're interested or want to?
Well, thank you. So my website is choicesinside.com. They can email me, Andrea at choicesinside.com. Uh, so what I've got, I'm gonna do a new group this summer called Summer Camp 2024. And so we're gonna have 6 weeks of going through experiences together. So, okay, create your vision. What is your vision
Mm-hmm.
of you accepting yourself? It's not to say, oh, you have to be there, or that that's even what you want, but creating a vision of you loving yourself, and as you are in this state. And the
I
reason
love that.
that is because again, shame doesn't allow for that kind of growth,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
or self-acceptance. So we want to be thinking about that. Yeah, allowing people to express their beliefs and feelings and thoughts about some of the summer subjects that come out. People, okay, we're changing our attire. I love my layers. And
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
is that like coming into summer clothing, going to
Yeah.
the pool or the ocean, um, the weight loss drugs that are happening right now,
Mm-hmm.
what comes up for people around that,
Mm-hmm.
um, defining their desire of their relationship with your body. So what is it I really want in
Yeah.
relationship? What do I desire? More acceptance of the space that you take up, befriending your inner critic. Um, so that's a fun one.
Yeah.
And then making a declaration. So being able to do what
You were
I
able to
did.
do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love
So that's
that.
one thing. And then there's other groups where kind of like when we started off in the beginning, it's like, oh, okay, so this is how I'm feeling being here. And when I'm talking about what I experience when people are looking at exploring their beliefs and challenging their own beliefs, or saying, I want to do something disruptive. or there's disruption happening, and what do I do
Yeah.
to navigate that?
Yeah.
That being an enlivening experience. And so having groups where, okay, small groups of women, summer camp is a small group of women where, okay, we can actually talk about like what's happening in the here and now between us.
Yep.
So more sense of community, one-on-one coaching on whatever a person wants to work on, and being in a fat and larger body, it's like, okay, yeah, like you might want a person who gets it in that realm. So
Yeah.
come and talk about your business, or your relationships, and doing that with me, or talk about working on body acceptance. Yeah. So
Amazing.
yeah, so those are some of the
Lots of
things.
awesome offers.
Workshops along the way, like
Okay.
befriending your inner critic and anger and all those good things. So yeah.
You're doing lots of good things. I love it. Well, I'll definitely share the link to your website and some info about the summer camp and all that in this newsletter, but definitely check out Andrea's stuff if you're interested, if it speaks to you, if you just want to connect with her further. Thank you so much for being here today. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their Tuesday. And I'll see you guys again soon.